I'm Mubin.
And my name is Praveen, and we are your hosts for tonight's grand final.
Yes, and gentlemen, I think you heard us speaking way too much, but yeah, we are going to be your hosts. So yeah, please bear with us. Anyways, moving on with our event. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware of the recent tragic missing flight MH370, our hearts goes out to them. And at this point in time, we would like to observe a moment of silence for the missing flight MH370.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a very tragic and unfortunate event. We pray for the missing victims and their families. Although I could hear some spoon and fork clanking, I know some of you guys are still eating during the moment of silence, but it's okay. It's okay. We still pray for them.
Well, Praveen, our thoughts are definitely with them, but you know what? We have to carry on with our grand final today. So let us carry on.
Yes, we should.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, now taking my attention to all of you. How are you guys doing today? Are you guys doing good, bad, or ugly? How are you guys doing? Okay, everyone's got their own opinions. I know why is this happening. Praveen, debaters are in this room. Everyone is full of opinions. Is that right, Praveen?
Yeah, definitely, they're full of opinions, and some of them are really hungry. Who's hungry?
Okay, calm your horses, hold your horses. But anyways, we know that you are doing well after these 3 days of intense and mind-sparing debate rounds. Well, Praveen.
Yeah, it would have definitely been very challenging for them, but they are all here, all well dressed and looking beautiful, and the guys are looking handsome. It's a good thing, right?
Yeah, not mentioned, Praveen. Like, our guest of honor is also actually dressed up today. Don't you think so?
Yeah, really looking really good. Alright, now let us sit back and enjoy the opening act, brought to you by Movie.
It's brought to us by the Emmys Gamala Productions. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together and welcome the opening act. Wow, Robin, wasn't that a wonderful performance? Alright, yeah, so definitely Robin is in the zone. But anyways, Robin, ladies and gentlemen, the performance moments ago is known as the One Malaysia dance. It is a combination of the cultural dance that many cultures shapes my beautiful nation, Malaysia. Robin,
Yeah, and the last time I moved that much, I sprained my back.
okay, I think that to be kept to yourself.
Yeah.
Let's get back here.
Alright. Indeed, it was a great performance.
Yes.
It was brought to you by MIDP Production. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause.
Let's give them a warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not easy to move that much, you know. Alright, once again, here we are in another edition of Malaysia Debate Open. Right here, where it all started, the great historic city of Malacca.
Yes, indeed, definitely, Praveen. And it's a very good feeling to have back all the debaters here after so long. And before we kickstart, as you all know, this has been awaited for every year, annually around the globe. But Praveen, please do enlighten everyone. What makes MDO so special, and what is MDO all about, Praveen?
Well, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, MDO is just like the other debate competition, but there's always a but everywhere. It is more about the whole experience of being up with old friends. I bet all of you know each other like way before, right? Right? You guys met before the previous MDO?
Yeah, some of them very busy, but it's okay, we just go along with it.
Yeah, and those memories made all these years, and this is also an event where we celebrate the brilliant minds of tomorrow.
True that, Praveen. And what makes this an exciting edition is that we can see the integration between races and many different nations together. And yes, talking about nations, right? This year we have participants coming all the way from Singapore. Can we get some noise from Singapore? Alright, I think Singapore. Okay, next up we have the Philippines. Here we go. Japan. Thailand. I would realize the critical and very demanding questions throughout the tournament. I believe it was such a hard time to debate.
Yes, it definitely is moving. But anyways, in order to proceed with our event, let's welcome Mr. Nadine Prasad, convener of the 6th Malaysia Debate Open 2014, to deliver his opening speech. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause.
And gentlemen, Rafi,
Yep.
Good evening, Your Honorable Guests, Vice President of Malacca, Dr. Hang, Senior Director of Student Affairs Division, Mr. Samsuri Abdul Majid, Tournament directors, Mr. Mohan and Shiva Shankar. Tournament advisors, Mr. Arul and Ms. Paula. And the SRC President of Multimedia University Malacca, Mr. Sharminions. Ladies and gentlemen, I, as the convener and the representative of the organizing committee, am extremely proud to host the 6th installation of the Malaysia Day of Birth, and that pride will be apparent throughout the speech. Hosting this prestigious tournament has been really a challenge and an extraordinary learning curve, both for us as university students. Speeches usually end with thank yous. However, I like to begin mine with an expression of gratitude, because like any good debate speech, the most important aspects need to take priority. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Hearn and Mr. Zamzuri, along with our SRC President, Mr. Chang, for allocating time out of the busy schedule to join us in this event in support of the art of debating. Secondly, I like to thank our university, Multimedia University Malacca, which has, through Student Affairs Division, supported us in numerous ways. Without the support, we wouldn't be able to run this tournament. Without the support, for example, we wouldn't have much funding to run this tournament, and we wouldn't have enough venues to host this tournament, just to name a few of the contributions, right? Thirdly, our sponsors, without whom the execution of this debate tournament with relatively low cost would have been impossible, right? Even with our institutional support. Fourthly, for media partners, for example, the Malay Mail, who made an interesting article about us 2 weeks before MDO. Also, more importantly, right, the adjudication corps who have been working tirelessly over the past few days, primarily and also throughout the last few months, taking care of various debating methods. I would like to call them out, right? First of all, we have Miss Maizura Hossain, the heroine of Malaysian debating. Then we had the voice of reason from Singapore, Mr. Roy Jain, who unfortunately couldn't be joining us. Thirdly, we have the fabulous Mr. Alistair Sosa from the Philippines. Fourthly, a man that can only be described as the veteran general of Bangladesh debating, Mr. Mabrowa Singh. Finally, Mr. Sayan Sanyan, who has been helping us from the state of Bangalore, India. He has existed as a virtual presence in the tournament. Next, I would also like to thank the 70 teams from 14 different countries who have traveled all the way from their home countries to be here with us today. Lastly, but definitely not the least, the amazing team of 25 which I had the opportunity to work with for the past 8 months. These highly specialized individuals, for most of them have helpers, of course, there has been most of them have been helpers and assistants in this past years, and right now they are at the very top running this level of tournament, and that requires a lot of skill, right? And of course, running an organization like this, right, sometimes you might have problems, right? Sometimes you have my simple, sometimes you have problems that you need to deal with. But hey, what organization doesn't? Honored guests, staying true with our motto this year, to revolutionize debate, we have introduced a few new things in this installment of MDO. Firstly, we have supported an NGO, Teach for Malaysia, an organization which fights for education equity in this country and their efforts to recruit students into the team. Realizing that debaters are generally the kind of people who really want to change the world in a positive way, it was a clear no-brainer to include them. And we hope that both debaters and Teach for Malaysia have benefited from this. Secondly, we have also introduced a new form of rating category in MDO this year. The English as a foreign language category, which, following the footsteps of all the major intervarsity tournaments in the world, we believe that it's an extraordinary achievement to not only speak, but to debate for a 7-minute speech in a language that you have less than 6 years experience in. And that's why we decided to recognize these individuals, right, and allow them to grade separately. MDO, ladies and gentlemen, will continue to be one of the biggest open debate tournaments in Asia to serve debaters worldwide. Like any tournament, the quality of the application pool was also important for us, building on last year's funds, we gave out 15,000 subsidies. We also, in the years to come, will strive to get lower fees to get more diversity to our tournament in line with the vision of what MDO was founded. We also, and I would like to highlight this, we also would like to leverage the attention that the Malaysian debating circuit will be getting by hosting the Asian School Debating Championships, the Asian British Parliamentary Debating Championships, and the World University Debating Championships, which all will be happening in Malaysia this year. We hope to leverage all the attention that we use and to use all the benefit of the debate. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, all of you being here, making this event a success means the world to us. Thank you and good luck to the finalists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naveen, for the warm words. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we would like to invite our guest of honor of the event, Professor Dr. Teng Swee Hui, to say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Professor Dr. Teng. So let's give a warm round of applause. I believe you're very busy there, but yeah, we put that thing aside for a moment. Give her a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
Very good evening to all. Campus Director of MDO and Senior Director of SPEC, Mr. Zamzuri Abdul Mazid, the convener, Mr. Mehmet Prasad, tournament directors, Mr. Mohan and Mr. Siva Sangha, tournament advisors, Mr. Aru and Kola, SLC President, Mr. Chan, debaters, staff and students. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for the invitation to this ceremony. I hope you have been having a splendid evening so far. It gives me a very great pleasure and honor to deliver this speech on behalf of the President of the University. On this occasion, there is the grand final of the 6th Malaysian Debate Open. Multimedia University is proud to warmly welcome all of you to this tournament. To our international friends, welcome to Malaysia. And may the splendor of Malacca impart you with long-lasting and beautiful memories. This is the 6th time we are organizing this debate tournament after a successful running for the past 5 years. In fact, last year's tournament was so successful that it was awarded the Best International Tournament Award in our very own MDO Award 2013. The passion for debate is well and truly alive in this university. Ladies and gentlemen, Multimedia University has long given support to our debaters so they can excel in this arena. We have consistently sent teams from both Malacca and Cyberjaya campuses to the local and international tournaments. Support was also given in the form of funding for their training programs, events, and tournaments. All these are done with the belief that the university must stand behind the students and support them in all aspects. At the end of the day, no one can be more proud than us when we see them coming back with good achievements. I believe each and every one of you is here because of the same kind of support given by your respective institutions. I am very happy to see all the great response to the tournament. Ladies and gentlemen, a debate can be a very passionate affair. It's common to see people getting into heated arguments just to get their points across. While there is no shortage of issues to be discussed, a proper platform is needed for proper discussions to take place. I believe debate is the best platform to manage such differences in opinion. Throughout these few days of competition, all of you must have tried your best to outdo your opponents. Various issues concerning the world must have been discussed, dissected, and analyzed by intelligent and sharp-minded minds like yours. Therefore, it's my hope to see that your newfound experience and knowledge in such burning issues to be put to good use. Ladies and gentlemen, this tournament would not have become a reality if not for the hard work put in by the organizing committee of the 6th Malaysia Debate Open. The working committees have truly gone all the way to organize a tournament on a grand scale such as this. So the end result is a prestigious tournament that truly befits its international status. Congratulations once again. To the wonderful sponsor, doctors and government, students and members of the public, I thank you for the support that you have provided towards making this a dream come true. To all participants, I hope you had a wonderful time debating here in Multimedia University in London. My best wishes to the two finalist teams. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Heng. For the debate, before we proceed, we would like to kindly request Professor Dr. Heng to remain on the stage as we like to give a souvenir presentation to you.
And now we would like to kindly invite Mr. Mohan Govindan and Mr. Shiva Shankar Ganesan, the general directors are on stage to present the souvenir of Dear Dr. Heng. Thank you so much. First, can we have Alright, now we go to the gentleman.
And then please give a round of applause for Professor Dr. Heng.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Professor. Right, Louis, do you know what's the number one problem for debaters on their very first time?
Well, I have.
Now I can see it. Okay, debaters, do you know what is your problem when during your very first time that I have to get married? You know.
Well, as much as I want to spill the beans, I will let you to have the honors of it.
Yeah, they wouldn't start until the educators enters the room. So right now, before we call up our edge call,
That was a good one, bro. I gotta give you. I never saw this coming. But anyways, as you're saying, let's call on our before we call on our edge calls. I'm very excited right now. I think we have to thank a few people, right?
yes, we have to thank our sponsors.
Yes, definitely. Without them, this event would not be a successful one. So, and our sponsors are, at this point in time, we'd like to thank the Malacca State Government, the Ministry of Education Malaysia, Grandfinal, Teach for Malaysia, 100 Plus, Syarikat Aminat Berhad, and Student Affairs Division of Multimedia University in London.
Yes, the Malay Mail is also our official media partner. So thank you once again for all sponsors for being here for the 6th edition of the Malaysia Debate Open 2014, because without them, we will really grow.
Let's put our hands together and give them warm round of applause for their help and their support. Thank you very much for being here. Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let us not waste any more time. Let's put our hands together to call in the edge call, because as what Praveen said, right? We want to call them so that we can begin with substance. Let's welcome the edge call to release the motions for tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen.
having a good night. I will be reading out the motions on behalf of the Education Corps. Before that, I'd just like to check, is Team Sharminion here? Is Team We're Actually Nice here? Yeah, we already had important cards earlier, so Team Sharminion will be proposing to list the motions, and Team We're Actually Nice will get a side opposition. I will be reading out all three motions, and time will start then. There you go, time starts. This House believes that the state has no right to request or demand its citizens to surrender their human lives. This House believes that there is no state duty to protect people from themselves. This House believes that the state should never pardon the crimes of individuals. 30 minutes starts now. Good luck, ladies.
Alright, and then now that the motions have been released, so all the best, both the teams.
Yes, all the best to you guys. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's the moment that some of us have been waiting for, others has already begun.
Yes, some of us are really dearly waiting for this. And
What is this moment, Robin? It's the dinner. The dinner commences right now. So
enjoy dinner, enjoy whatever that you are going to do in between the dinner. And yes, we will be right back with you in just a few moments. By the way, anything up during dinner to
yes, besides all the chewing and swallowing, we have a very beautiful piece.
Okay, we will be serenaded by songs and everything, but don't worry, the person who's going to sing the song will just jump on stage at the moment when she feels inspired and everything. You know, she's not going to spill the food on the table. So, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dinner, and we will be back in a very short moment. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, we have the music all the way from Dutch. We have DJ Tiesto and DJ Armin Van Buren at the back there. So we wouldn't want any crowd. So
I think the answer is getting okay. Thank you very much.
I can't see it. Alright.
Let's go. Let's come back. Alright.
Enjoy your dinner, ladies and gentlemen.
We have sky balloon, not sky, as in sky, as in Hanul, Hanul here. Richard, please stop forward. Sharing, sharing.
Right, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, can I please get your attention? Right now, while we are indulging our dinner, I'm going to call upon a very good friend of mine. He was the best goalkeeper in Mansfield University of Malacca for the past 2 years. And not only he's a good goalkeeper, he's a great singer. Yes, he has won the Malaysian Idol like 3 times. And he's going to Australia in July to become the judge of Australian Idol. Yes, that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for one and only Sharminions. And he's going to present us a song. It's called My Way. So, guys, are you ready?
Yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. And now, hear his name. So I praise the final word. My friends, I'll say you and speak my peace. And I will go high to reach every highway and more. Pressing left, I regress. I have you. Compare again, so you mentioned I did what I had to do, and so without exemption, I ran each other, each step along the highway and more, much more than this. Okay, everybody. Yes, I'll show you where I belong, where I can choose. But we know that there is trouble. I know, and we know, I can go, and I can go, and live I've never cried. I have my share, my bit of losing, and now, as tears subside, I so you think I will have, and when I say, I'm in the shadow. Oh, my king, I did it my way. From my little man, woman still young, it's not himself, Let me have a stop. 2, 3, 2, 3. I took the road
Alright, that was a performance by Sharminions, and this broadly known as the King of MDO. Let's put our hands together and give him a warm round of applause. That was Sharminions and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chandra. I can't even talk, I feel like crying.
I'm so emotional right now.
Ramesh, you want to tissue? You have my shoulder over here.
Look at
Okay, anyways, in gentlemen, we both are having a great time. Well, we just like to announce that we might be beginning in a short while, right?
Yes, we will begin in a while. So finish up your food, grab your friend's food. If you can't finish his food as well. I'm sure a lot of girls they can't eat much because they are diet and stuff. So guys, please finish up your friend's food. We will begin in a while, right, Mohit?
Yeah, definitely. And I saw like some people are playing with the this side. I think they're reading the channel. Keep it up, guys. We're happy for you. As long as you are happy. Get back to you just a moment. Thank you very much.
Alright, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Right, ladies and gentlemen, so if you guys have friends at home who want to know what's going on, ask them to go to YouTube and we are now on YouTube live stream right now. Yes, that's right. Then YouTube, yeah, it's under MIDP channel, right?
Yeah, so if you have fans back at home, maybe you can just tell them to tune on right now because your face will just come on the screen and everything. You might be the YouTube side, that's the moment yeah. You might want to do that, yeah.
Yeah, if you have any single friends, you should tell them to see because my face and movie face will be there all the time. Alright, MIDP. Please give a round of applause to MIDP, the Malaysian Institute for Debate and Public.
Yeah, we got a web link which shows us it's MalaysianDebaters.org. Yeah, if you want to get direct access to it, it's MalaysianDebaters.org. Yeah, we can see people coming in, so
Yeah. And they're all the best to ahead.
Yes, definitely. Your eyesight is very good, brothers.
Yes.
Anyways, then we would like to kindly request you to take your seats. Because we will be beginning in just a few moments. And yes, as we see at the screen over here, yeah, the live stream.
That's a live stream. I can see you. This is.
Yeah, very good. Such an attention seeker.
I knew you were there. Yeah.
But I can't see anything from it. But you know what? Let's get back. We should be questions as we are. So yeah. Going to the announcement from the next person. Giving them to respond to the meetings.
MDO ya Richard Mustafa Sherry Naplo.
Alright, and gentlemen, now that the adjudicators are taking their places, then we would like to request everybody to sit down and be calm because we are going to begin the grand final debate right now. Is that right, Ravi?
Yes, that's right. Wait, how's the food for you?
Well, I think food was exceptional because I think I was just craving, so I just stopped myself, just kept on eating.
Yeah, I didn't want to come here and continue my food thing, but I had to leave the food behind. It's really good.
Yeah. But anyways, Robin, let's not drag anymore.
Alright, let's welcome the government and the opposition up to the stage for the grand finals to begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, welcome Sharminions, and we are actually nice for the grand finals debate today. Let's welcome them with a warm thunderous round of applause.
gentlemen, give you a round of applause for finally right here. Ladies and gentlemen, let the house come to an order. Go ahead.
Alright, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let the house come to an order. Once again, let's put our hands together and begin the grand finals debate. Ladies and gentlemen, Sharminions and We Are Actually Nice.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Grand Finals of MDO 2014. Affirmative, we have Sharminions, and negative, we have We're Actually Nice. Our judges for this round, from my left, we have Sherilyn. To my right, we have Mustafa, Brett, Emilia, Rashad, and Mabrur. I'm Alistair. This is your 7-man panel for this Grand Final. Please take the camera off. So the motion before this house is this house believes that the state should never pardon the crime of any individual. We call on the Honorable Prime Minister to open the debate.
In the context of liberal democracies, executive pardons are characterized as heads of state pardoning or forgiving individuals who are proven guilty of committing crimes. On side affirmative, we believe that this practice is wrong for two reasons. Firstly, we think that you are fundamentally suggesting that there are people above the law. Secondly, we think that this highlights the differences that exist between individuals who have less access to resources and the rich elites who have the ability to, have so many connections. More than that, we think that this incentivizes or decharacterizes the value of the basic guarantee of equality under the law. Because when you're under a court of law, individuals both already have the ability to prove their cases. That's why some individuals can argue about how sodomy isn't evil. More than that, on the affirmative side, we think that this is different from things like plea bargainings or peace deals between groups, because these are things that occur prior to conviction, meaning that there is still negotiations that take place within a state. This is different from things like when people turn to state witnesses and provide information, because this is prior to when guilt has been established under a rule of law, under a jury, or whatever form of legal process takes place within these liberal democracies. But before I proceed to my constructive yes.
Right, so the conclusion is that nobody is above the law. How does that change if the conclusion is that the harm was the same amount and the same degree?
Well, sir, if you let me go on to my constructive, I'll be able to answer that. But thanks for raising the DOI. Firstly, in terms of the principle, we think there's a violation of the equality of the law. Because the point when a conviction is established is that crimes have already taken place. There is due process that happens. More than that, if these individuals who have been convicted of crimes feel that no due process has been served, then they have the option to appeal. And we think that that's particularly important. Why? Because when crimes have been established, victims have been hurt, and damage has been established to society. And to some extent, to great extent, we don't think that this damage is undoable. No, thank you. That's why there is a uniform application or a belief in the systems of law. This is why people have confidence in law structures. Because law structures are not going to, because law structures are supposed to give them justice for the crimes that were done unto them. And we don't think that pardons necessarily highlight that value, because you're already saying that yes, we can, to some extent, we can forgive the crimes that were committed. So we don't think that does any justice to victims. No, thank you. But how do pardons work? And to respond to my dear POI, we think powerful individuals have have a greater ability to access this option. Why do we think this is so? Because usually powerful individuals, let's say, mobilize support or lobby from government, say for example, or governments to pardon them. So we think to some extent, though, thank you, what it does is that it privileges an elite within society. Like if I'm a poor person arguing for a pardon, it's less likely for the government to believe me because I have less influence in society. We point to examples of, say, the current Prime Minister of, say, Thailand, when she tried to pardon her brother, that brought riots within the country. We think to some extent that highlights the significance, the difference that takes place in society. But on a third level of argumentation, we think what this does is that it already highlights how certain individuals can access the rule of law and how you can undo the harms that were done to the victim. But more than that, onto my second level of argumentation. We think that it entrenches that the justice system can be accessed more so by the rich. To some extent, we think it's unfair to say that we think to some extent it's unfair that it creates this culture of impunity because it highlights the idea that if you have connections, then you're more likely to get away with the crimes that you commit. And to that extent, it's bad for these victims because now you're saying that every time I'm able to bring a person who is convicted of crime, no, thank you, there's a great chance of him being absolved of it. So to some extent, it harms the deterrence process that works within the systems of law. Because now criminals will have the idea that you're able to get away with the crimes that they commit, especially if you're rich and powerful. More secondly, the second layer of analysis, we think that this is bad for the victims themselves. Usually, in these types of trials or these types of cases, victims already have an uphill battle, meaning that that it's hard for them to prove their case in a court of law. Why? Because there are more risks that happen in fears, threats to their lives. And now when we have this concept of pardon, what necessarily happens is that these people are less incentivized to proceed with their cases because now there's a great chance of this person being pardoned and the fear or the threat will come back. But yes.
Yeah. So it's very rarely unthinkable. So why would anyone will have to say pardon and do one?
Not necessarily. The point, like I said earlier in my speech, Joseph Estrada from the Philippines was pardoned by his then Vice President, Gloria Arroyo. And to some extent, Thaksin Shinawat was almost pardoned by his sister. To some extent, we think that this is accessible for these individuals because there's a hierarchy that exists. Like these individuals may also have other people who they can consult for them within the rich upper class in terms of how justices are committed towards for people. But more than that, it exacerbates the structural deficiencies that already take place. Think about it. Poor people always have a harder time filing or have a harder time because they have to testify, they have to talk about their experiences against rich lawyers who will misconstrue the facts to some extent and fight for the rich people. And to some extent, they don't even have as much public support. And we think that it's hard for them to proceed with their cases. Because what happens then is that we tell them that it's already an uphill battle to just fight for your justice. The difference when pardon comes into the equation, if they're convicted and guilt established, the state is saying that the harm can be undone and that the crime can be forgiven. We think ultimately that isn't the message that we want to send to these individuals. Because when you send them that message, you tell them that the fight that they had initially was for nothing. Because now all the threats that they did fear initially are more likely to occur again. So we think overall these are the harms that we want to stop and these are the rights that we want to protect. For all those reasons, we're proud to oppose.
We thank the Prime Minister for his speech. Before we move on to the leader of opposition, we thank the united audience to please keep your discussions down, especially if you don't have any of them. Hello.
Assalamualaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, side government has to show why every instance the state should never pardon a person. That's what we have to show. But we have to show to side opposition is that in some instances it is legitimate and it is okay for the state to use this executive pardon as a tool to make sure that we have good benefits. The two things in my speech I was talking about with regards to substance. First, here we entertaining the idea of how the principle of justice is not absolute. Secondly, in some instances, executive pardons are absolutely necessary. But before that, let's take a walk down memory lane and listen to what the Prime Minister has talked about. First and foremost, he said that under this model where executive pardons exist, rich people will always get pardoned. Now let's look at the reality and status quo. Rich people can always still win cases. The reason why they are able to do this is because they're capable of hiring a lawyer, I didn't mean lawyers who can win the cases because they have money from every pocket they keep in their hands. And the reason why this is the reality is because this harm still exists under their model. Under our model where executive pardons do exist, people will not expect a pardon when they commit a crime. It is absolutely rare. You don't commit a crime, kill people, burn buildings, and just suddenly go on a rampage because you think, aha, let's sing Kumbaya, I'll probably get a pardon. It doesn't work that way. That is not the reality. No, thank you, man. Let's go on the second thing, right? They say that these individuals, we are telling you, secondly, with regard to guilt and the sentencing, let's make one thing very clear. This executive pardons only come into effect after the individual is found guilty. That means, ladies and gentlemen, mitigating factors come into play. This is basic law 101. Why is this important? Because when it comes to mitigating factors, your age, your health, all these things come into play, especially with your socio-economic background. Why is this important? Because this principle shows that not everyone is equal under the law. Because the law punishes you based on the circumstances you're in and who you are, based on the surroundings that you're in, right? Let's go on the third thing. They say it's bad for victims. Let's look at the reality. These victims are compensated. We can compensate them. They already do this, right? Secondly, the guilt is already established. So if you are a victim of a crime where the person has been pardoned, the guilt has been established. The societal closure that you wanted so badly already exists under status quo. And even if it really is that, we see there is a trade-off, and I will tell you how it might be. Let's go on to the first thing I want to talk about. How the principle of justice is not absolute. Now let's look at the reality. The state has to be pragmatic. Everything can't be up in the clouds the way they want it to be. No, thank you. So what are the examples, or what are the examples that we can point to understand the justice system when they compromise on its principles to be pragmatic? Let's look at these examples. Number one, you have plea bargaining. You have secondly, you have settlements. Thirdly, you have pleading guilty to make the process or to achieve the guilt or innocence to much faster pace. And lastly, the justice system lessens your sentences because you may have dependencies because you may be old or ill. This happens before and during a trial. So in reality, you do have a court system that just compromise because it cannot stay. It has to respond to the realities of the situation that people are in. So in conclusion, executive pardons serve as a utility, and that utility is to maximize the good for everyone. So let's look at the example of how it maximizes good, right? You have the state and the court that behaves in a utilitarian manner. They want to achieve the best for everyone. You have seen trade-offs, and the biggest and most important simple example you can see is when you look at drug mules and how they give out information for lesser sentences to nail the kingpins and make sure they are caught. So you cannot say the justice system cannot evolve or cannot be adapted, right? Let's take one now.
Do you know why there are very few pardons? Because there are very few convictions as it is. And you're taking away what the whole people have to hang on to in the justice system by pardoning those people.
What do you mean the convictions are little? When you commit a crime, you're convicted. But then you need to bear until now. You can't just say, oh, there's so little convictions. That doesn't make sense. They're little executive pardons how they're doing now. Let's go on to the second thing, right? In some instances, executive pardons are absolutely necessary. Three things here. As we like it to come down, right? Let's go on to three things here. Number one, there's several motivations of why executive pardons exist, right? First and foremost, let's look at the realm of politics. It is to cater to the domestic dissatisfaction to ensure political stability. What do I mean by this, right? That means if someone has to be given an executive pardon to ensure that a riot doesn't happen within your country because the opposition leader has been found guilty of something, then you probably want to do that to ensure that you have some semblance of political stability. When we look at the realm of politics, when it comes to international relations, we have a different perception of the international community. Look at the example of the Lockerbie bomber. He was released and he was pardoned because he's old and sick. The trade of him was extremely important. The Lockerbie bomber was the gravitational point of where the entire Middle East was going to say that this person, because they treated the Lockerbie bomber in a very ill mannered way, we must hate the United States of America. So the trade-off was big. The international relations and the good image that we had by moving or removing this bad image is extremely important. Secondly, executive pardons can be used as a catalyst of change. Let's look at their use, for example, Al-Fualiyah, the landed vice syndrome, right? Where unjust laws exist. The executive can be a mobilizing tool to ensure that changes happen within Congress. What happened? Al-Fualiyah killed her husband because she was provoked into killing him by constantly being abused over years and years and years. These kind of people have the executive pardon given to them because the law is unjust at that point in time, and we have to protect this individual. Last but not least is the idea of humane action. At times, the state cannot guarantee the safety of some individuals, especially when they become targets in jail. Let's look at the examples here. We have sick people, we have old people who have dependency on others. They can't stay in jail. The problem here is if you put these people in jail, they either die because someone will kill them very easily and they can't defend themselves. Furthermore, homosexuals and transsexuals that end up in jail do not have the guarantee of safety, which means our policy here with the executive pardon can be given to them as a humane aspect to make sure that they don't receive a disproportionate amount of harm to them. In principle, not everyone is equal on a pedestal. State government has to realize that.
We thank the leader of opposition for his speech, once again recognizing the audience to minimize the discussions if possible at front of them. Calling on the Deputy Prime Minister.
I will answer 3 questions in my speech, and I will weave in my rebuttal instructions. Number 1, which policy reduces inequality in the justice system? I accept we're never going to fully reduce it. I think we should try to. Next, which factors come into play when deciding a pardon? Is it the benevolent mitigating circumstances they talk about, or is it about wealth, the ability to mobilize resources, and connections to people in power? What is the effect on victims? What is the effect on access to justice and pursuit of justice? So, which reduces inequalities in the justice system? Jemma gave a POI. I think they think it was smart, but it actually hurts them. The POI says very few people have actually been pardoned. Our first response to that is, who are usually pardoned? We say these are usually the rich people. You know why there are very few people who have been pardoned? Because very few rich people have been convicted in the first place. It's hard enough to convict them because of the structural disadvantages in the law, which they have to sit. If a lot of people have been pardoned, then those drug mules that you talked about have been pardoned too, right? But you say very few people are pardoned. Pardon is rarely exercised. Tell me, what are the chances of that being exercised to defend a poor drug mule when there was a miscarriage of justice? What are the chances of that being used on poor people? The fact that very few pardons have been used is because very few rich people to use them on, right? And why is that so harmful for a justice system? Because to inspire faith in the justice system, people need to hang on to these small and rare victories, right? These convictions are few and far in between, but they give people hope. And that's why a huge part of the Philippines was so disheartened and lost faith in the justice system because the only president, in fact, that high-ranking public official to be convicted of murder, Joseph Estrada was pardoned. After that, what else do they have to hold on to? What else do they have to hope for? Right? But before I go on, yes. Alright, thank you. Next, which factors come into play when you pardon people? They try to wash this debate and confuse us, but we refuse to be confused, right? They say mitigating factors. Is it like age, like your niceness, like your sickness, like the possibility that you were abused in jail, come into play when you are executively pardoned? We don't think so. We think the justice system accounts for these things. The sentence you are given is already proportional to these mitigating circumstances. You raise them during the trial, not after the trial, friend. If you have special information to share or to give to reduce your sentence, you do that in the trial process. If you suddenly want to reveal something after you're convicted, you can try for an appeal. But you don't plead to the executive of the state. How many of us really have a hotline to the state executive? How is that fair? Not really. And then they say, but it's good for political stability because sometimes it increases support in your government or de-escalates tension when people are pardoned. Do you realize the perverse incentive this creates? If I am a rich person, a rich politician, it's so easy for me to mobilize my resources to get the state to pardon me. That's what Estrada did. That's what Taksin is doing in Thailand now. He's paying off supporters to rally in favor of him getting pardoned. This does not have a de-escalating effect. It has a destabilizatory effect, right? And that's why we want to cut off this tool so people don't use it to destabilize the government and essentially blackmail the state to forgive their sins. Yes?
Yeah, what things that you can do think back what it can't take handle is the national interest of a country. Why should the executive, if you put in power, be able to account for those things?
What does national interest even mean? I said national interest means the strength of your justice system, the willingness of victims to come forward and pursue their cases, that your state is not held hostage by people who are taking advantage of a tool you are giving them. If this tool is not there, then they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. So I don't understand how you define national interest. I really want to hear it. It wasn't clear in Habib's speech. Now, again, the debates are more than the greater majority of cases, right? And I think we've shown you fairly clearly when pardons are more likely to be used in the greater majority of tiny cases that they are actually used. And we said it's more likely for the rich and powerful. Do we think that de-escalates tensions? No. In the two case studies we've given you, it worsened tensions. I'd like to hear a counter-narrative of that from them. But let's talk about this in terms of its effect on the victims, right? Because Habib was very dismissive of this. Oh well, if you're a victim, at least you get some nominal recognition that you were a victim, you know? You should be happy that the state recognizes that you were a victim. Never mind, a lot of these crimes are usually high-level crimes with huge multiplier effects in society, right? Corruption, plunder. When you steal money, you literally kill people because you kill healthcare systems, you kill education systems, and things like that. But that's fine. Apparently, victims are supposed to be content with a nominal recognition that a crime was committed. When you commit a crime against the state, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to financially compensate all the victims to justify your pardon. That's just not enough for us, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's really, really dismissive. But what is the impact on activist movements? What is the impact on victims? We told you how important symbolic victories are to those people, right? Yes, it's true that not everyone gets pardoned. That's because not everyone gets convicted. But as it stands, they're already fighting an uphill battle because they're structurally disadvantaged, right? Those people have rich lawyers. They have collusion with law enforcement agencies. They can threaten and intimidate people who bring forward cases against them. But what hope people have is the knowledge that there are some convictions that result in people landing in jail. There is no substitute for nominal recognition that you did something wrong. The national catharsis that is generated by the image of this person in jail is essential to healing, is essential to believing in the justice system again, and it's a ripple effect because later on they'll be more willing to fight this fight and bring cases forward. They say some jails are not comfortable to some people. Well, then a jail is not meant to be comfortable if you're a criminal, but if your concern is prison abuse, That's an entirely different issue. If you're concerned that someone has really grave health issues, give them access to medical officers in jail. In most extreme of cases, you can do a combination of sending them to hospitals when they're ill and back to their jail cell when they're not. But we're not alright with exceptionalism. We don't think that's fair, and we don't think that communicates a message that inspires confidence in people. Again, they said pardons are very rarely used. That can never be consistent with their argument, but it is used to defend drug mules and people who are oppressed by unconstitutional laws. You can do that through the courts, because the courts can rule a previous law to have been unconstitutional. Do not do it through executive overreach of the judiciary. We are proud folks.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for her speech. We call her the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Well, thankfully for us all, debating sometimes actually takes place outside of just the context of the Philippines. The affirmative team set up in this debate that we were talking about this policy as it exists in Western liberal democracies more broadly. And for that reason, the characterization that governments are beholden to special interest groups and those things would never be interrogated is utterly untrue. These are democratically elected governments in Western liberal countries where the decision to pardon any individual is put through the media ringer, where there is a huge amount of scrutiny over those decisions by virtue of the fact that everybody recognizes, as the affirmative team does, that this is a trade-off and that something is lost. So we wholeheartedly disagree. The context of this debate is one in which there is mass-scale police corruption, one in which money is the only thing that determines the outcome of a trial, and one in which any person can get off. But if those things are true, fix those problems. If it is true that the amount of money you earn definitively determines whether or not you will end up in jail at the end of a trial, fix those problems by restricting the amount of money people can put onto lawyers, by making everybody only be able to access public lawyers, by spending more money on defending the defenseless and the poor. Those issues are not in this debate. Effective money is not the only issue in this debate, and it's something we can resolve whilst allowing executives to take account of what is in the best interest of a country. This is an interesting thing about Shamila's speech. She asked us to provide a counter-narrative. What's the point to respond to the fact that we gave you many examples of where executive pardons had been given in the West that were not simply to help your political parties. That's more to engage with the counter-narrative we did provide. 3 questions in this speech. First of all, what do we already sacrifice for justice, and more importantly, what ought we sacrifice in this debate to get the most just outcome in the long run? Obviously, I'll talk about victims there. Secondly, who actually gets executive pardons and how often are they given out? And finally, why is it that a government, or more importantly an executive, should have autonomy? Because to be clear, this policy says that a government should never be able to pardon somebody. We do not defend that every time a government is pardoned somebody is a good idea. We think in general it is a necessary function of government. Sure. Your first speaker conceded that the rich people will always have an advantage in the justice system. Now you're counter-proposing it. Second, that we should fix those problems magically. No, why not? We acknowledge that it is true that money plays a part, right? We also acknowledge that you minimize the extent to which that's true. We're also willing to accept, even Shamila, that sometimes rich people might get off more lightly, but in general, it is better that governments are able to pardon people. We've actually acknowledged that. So let's talk about what we're willing to trade off for justice, right? We gave you a significant number of examples of cases where we already trade off the maximum amount of justice, right? Now we're trying to worm their way out of plea bargains in this debate by saying, we haven't established guilt yet. The premise of plea bargains is that you know you're going to be found guilty, the state knows you're going to be found guilty, and that's the reason you take the plea bargain in the first place, right? But also in order to engage with the fact that we toy around with sentencing after guilt has been established all of the time. Yes, it is true that we already account for mitigating circumstances, which was Shamila's model. But what you didn't want to engage with was that it is a principled acceptance that sometimes 2 people who have committed the same crime do not deserve the same sentence. And sometimes there are pragmatic reasons to change the sentence somebody is given. To be clear, 2 people commit the same crime, and one of those people is let out 10 years earlier because they have dependent children. Victims don't feel good about that, but that is a utilitarian outcome. Something that they need to, and in fact, did defend in this debate. So justice isn't personal. What was the principle we told you that sometimes the law is wrong. And then when it comes to that, there are instances where the law is wrong, the legislature will not change the law, and the executive recognizes that the law needs to be changed. So oftentimes, we are the person who recognizes that. But even more so, oftentimes the punishment that is given is not equal, and that's what they need to engage with. When somebody develops a significant illness midway through a jail sentence and needs to live out their days dying of cancer in a jail cell, that is not an equal treatment to somebody who is not in that situation. So if you have a team that wants equality under the law, you need different outcomes for different people. That's why you should defer to the state to make those decisions. But let's talk about victims. She was right to say that victims wouldn't get particularly happy, even with the fact that somebody had been found guilty but then pardoned. Thank God the justice system is not based around hearing all of the time talk of maximise the happiness of victims. And Chanel knows this is debating 101, because victims are not rational and because the state accounts for broader interests, which is why it doesn't always have every single criminal in jail for the maximum amount of time, which is why it doesn't always kill people, even though victims would oftentimes like to see that happen. We don't think that victims and the resolution that is given to them is the number one part of this debate. So let's move on. Given we've already accepted that states trade these things off all the time to talk about why they should trade them off in this particular circumstance. Who gets them? She says only rich people. Okay, and then she says our acknowledgement that not many are given is simply a recognition that not many convictions are reached apparently in the West. Like God knows what courts are doing in the West, just sitting on their thumbs apparently. Alright, in the Venn diagram of number of convictions, there is a circle inside with a number of pardons. There are less pardons than there are convictions, which necessarily points to that a pretty terrible response to this argument. And the reason for that is because the state comes a bunch of slack when it actually pardons people who the victims we talked about will pressure the state not to do it. And that's the counterbalancing force in this debate. So when does the state make the risky decision to pardon someone? And it's not just because they have political cronies. It's because they might quell significant discontent with the populace that might lead to rioting, that might lead to more deaths, that might lead to an economy falling apart. And if the Thai government wants to make a decision that would get that economy back on its feet and stop people rioting and killing each other in the streets, we are okay with that. We are the team that says that is a reasonable decision for them to make. So the reality is in this debate, there are a whole bunch of reasons, international, domestic, and others, including that they want to engage with. Sometimes the law is plain wrong. The law lags behind what societal opinion is. Legislatures are unwilling to change the law, and executives need to push that change to occur. We think those are just outcomes. Let's be clear in this debate. We don't think pardons are always a good idea. We think states recognise that, and we think there is a significant amount of pressure on states from victims and people like Shakila not to pardon these individuals, which is why they are very sparing when they do choose to pardon somebody. When they do, there are significant benefits to them doing so. This doesn't incentivise people to commit crime by virtue of the recognition that pardons are extremely rare. What it does recognise is that the executive is put in power to govern a country and to do what is best for that country, something a court can never do. We oppose.
We thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for her speech. Now we call her the government leader.
Opposition told us that pardons are rarely used. But if you listen to their case, they're very happy to pardon specific classes and sexualities of people who are oppressed in prison. Homosexuals, old people, and there's a substantial portion of old people who are in prison. We are unsure what they genuinely want. Initially, they said only a few people will be pardoned, but we need to recognize that they're very happy to pardon specific classes of people, age groups. We think that simply does not correlate with with what they wanted to defend. I'm going to look at 4 things. Number 1, justice. Secondly, even if these are Western democracies, are the counterbalancing acts efficient? Thirdly, how do we best reverse unjust laws? Should we go to the courts or should we use their method of pardoning? And finally, how do we de-escalate tension? The 4 clashes. First things first, justice. We told you that their perception of justice is not premised upon a lottery, because now it's contingent on the financial resources that you have, the networking, politicians, friends which you have. The response was, this is the United States, regulated. Last I checked, if you look at the case of Citizens United, which regulated the amount of lobbying which could be used, that case was overturned. That means because corporations are treated as citizens and money politics play a substantial role in America itself. But more importantly, regulating big corporations, strong lobbying powers and lobbying interests is freaking difficult. That's why we have big pharma, big plants, and all those things. We think simply insensitive for them to just say, well, let's hope that we can regulate it. But whether we can regulate it or not is still secondary. Because pardoning is context sensitive, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, some people will get it and some people won't. So at the end, it's not premised on the luck and lottery. We think that's simply unfair. But furthermore, even if it does not specifically privilege the rich or the elite, still justice is still premised upon a lottery for the poor, the victims who have suffered. Habib told us that, well, their guilt has already been established. Shamila ridiculed Gemma did not respond. I do not recognize how, like, I'm sorry, I'm guilty, but not going to jail after raping a person, after plunging my country to a state of war. I don't know how that's sufficient. Well, to them it's sufficient. But then they want to bring this counter narrative. Well, under our policy, there's some form of lottery of justice as well. An example was, well, under status quo, there are mitigating factors for all people, they'll be released early. The reason why that mitigating factor exists because it is proportionate, because it is torturous for you to put a whole person, especially when he needs medical equipment and facilities there. But when you look at the mitigating factor for a person to plead guilty, there's a massive trade-off there, which means that you're not prolonging the court process, and the trade-off is there. But if you look, ladies and gentlemen, at your policy of pardon, the trade-off is not there, because you are simply pardoning a person. And it's untrue when Gemma told you, well, plea bargaining is made because you already know that you are guilty. That's untrue. The reason why the state would even bow down to you to reduce sentencing is because the possibility and the risk of losing. This clearly shows it is untrue for them to simply characterize that plea bargaining means that you are guilty and that is sufficient. So we think they will not say that point. Sit down. Then we told you that this will deter victims from testifying. Keep in mind that under status quo, it's already very difficult for victims to testify, will be humiliated in courts, lawyer will back them, whether they agree or not, will still be there. But then they say, well, it's only a possibility that you will that pardon will be given or not. But imagine if President Bush's brother raped me, and he goes up to you and intimidates. There is a very high possibility that my brother will pardon me. There's a very high possibility that I will be released. That level of intimidation is unbelievably strong because still premised on patronage and networking which you have. Whether it will be exercised or not is secondary, but the possibility of intimidation is already a big count. But secondly, even if these people are jailed, the victims will forever be living in the cycle of fear because that person can be released at any point in time because of the existence of the pardoning system. They will always be living in a cocoon of fear because that person can be released, the perpetrator of the crime can be released. Before I move on, anyone.
For your arguments about deterrence and victims not coming forward to be meaningful in this debate, surely you had to prove that pardons are something people could rely upon or use even more than just occasionally.
You told us that you're looking at specific classes of people, the poor, homosexuals are bullied in prison, so that is a substantial portion of people. But even if this is a small portion, the rhetoric of intimidation that you are tied to this person, that you know this person, you've taken a picture from that person, the victim who's already scared and isolated, getting bullied, that intimidation is already strong enough. It doesn't have to happen. The possibility is sufficient. Sit down. Second, counterbalancing acts. This is our Western democracies. It is fair that people rarely use it. 3 responses. Number 1, the reason why politicians and activists can still do this is because of the long electoral cycles which exist, which means the public populace will either forget about it because it happens at the initial stage, the first year to the 4th year, or the point in which they give the party in the first year, that means they have time to build their identity again. Example is, when Arroyo gave his pardon during the first term, ladies and gentlemen, during the first day in office, even if you look at the Watergate scandal, ladies and gentlemen, was pardon happened during the first term and during the first year of office. The second reason is because the activity can be fed attention through the implementation of
colour policies. That's when they give out subsidy policies, ladies and gentlemen, or institute policies of nationalism. The reason why the Watergate scandal did not receive massive burdening, ladies and gentlemen, by the media is because of the act. Because it's easy for the executive to deflect power by implementing other benevolent policies to deflect attention. Sit down. But then you can deflect attention times because of luck. The point which national disaster breaks out, or a terrorist attack happens, means there will be a massive media deflection from the real parliament issue which happened and like what happened in America, which building got attacked as a terrorist attack, and it deflected attention from the Watergate scandal. Third catch, unjust law. They said, well, sometimes the unjust laws which are there. We think it's better to use the court and due process, and what Rosa Parks use. What can the courts do? If the courts can appeal through public policy, if public policy says that the law is unjust, you can overturn it. Second, claim that it's unconstitutional, use the ultra-virus. The court has done it with Rosa Parks, will be done it. Why are the courts better? Why? Because it generates good discourse, ladies and gentlemen, not polarized discourse, intellectual discourse. There will be judicial precedents which will be set, which other courts will follow, in which people will follow. We think that's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's much better. De-escalation of tension. And this is where we clearly want the Gemma did not engage with our argument. Your policy creates a perverse incentive for rich people to mobilize their financial support for ready to happen. Because under the policy, they agree they agree that, well, pardons will only be given if you have support on the ground. That means you have a great incentive to bring every single person on the ground to ready that what's happening in Thailand. We think that escalates conflict. It escalates class warfare where people see that the rich are being privileged and the poor aren't. There's a possibility of attention which is there for all these reasons. I'm very happy to propose.
We thank the government for his speech. Now we call on the opposition leader.
The primary failure of side government in this debate is to justify why a blanket policy was extremely necessary in Western liberal democracies, where laws that we approve, there are certain circumstances that are extremely necessary for us to evaluate individuals' consequences on a case-by-case basis. We did not make up this Western liberal democracy context. Your Prime Minister did, followed by a flurry of examples in a contextualized nation like the Philippines. I'll do two things in my speech today. Firstly, I'll talk about why pardons maximize abilities for better justice to be served. Secondly, I'll talk about, and this primarily engages with Sadiq's speech, do we track justice and are we able to mete out justice the way we're supposed to? Firstly, do pardons maximize abilities for better justice? Do pardons maximize abilities for better justice to be served? The first POI that I asked was, it shouldn't matter where the plea bargain or when the plea bargain was made. Because under your analysis and your absolute principle is that as long as there is a harm committed to any category of individual, your plea bargaining, even before the court trial, still reduces the deserved sentencing that a certain person was able to go through. So on a principle level, they failed us. Secondly, they told us then, on the second level of analysis, no, people don't think they're going to fail. Sadiq then contradicted himself by saying, no, the state gives in because the state feels that the state has a low probability of giving up. Why doesn't that element exist in the converse? So if I know I'm probably going to get a guilty verdict, why wouldn't I plead into that to get a lesser sentence? We think your analysis was contradictory. Sit down. Now we analyze why they integrally needed to prove that there is a burden to have a blanket policy against all pardons. We think this necessarily needs to engage with the crux of side position. Because as long as we can prove there are necessary cases where pardons are absolutely the only the decision that needs to be made, they need to be made. Sit down. The first harm that they told us is, well, Thaksin can mobilize people on the streets. We told you from this speech, from Gemma's speech, that means the accusation of Sadiq that we didn't engage was kind of silly. We conceded to this from the get-go in Jemaah. We told you, if those individuals have the capacity to mobilize these people and to cause riots and to cause more harms than possibly sending one person to prison, we are willing to accept that trade-off because we are the team that supports the utilitarian approach. More, the better benefits for the most amount of people. Sit down. Then what's the strange analysis? The study told us, and this team in general told us that, well, only very rich people, because of their extremely large amount of finances, will get that opportunity to meddle with law, to manipulate law, because their connections, they are very rich. But this concedes one thing, that is very rich individuals, that is very powerful people, went to court to begin with, and was eventually given a guilty verdict. So they're not that powerful that the courts don't find them innocent. They're not that rich to hire the best lawyers, because they were still given a guilty verdict. So that analysis was not parallel to the case. But let's look now at the stuff that they did not respond to from the side of the vision. We told you it is a tool for change, because there are sometimes certain elements that the court are beholden to when it comes to the legislature. We gave you loads of analysis on this side when it came to the battered wife syndrome and why Ahluwalia had to be pardoned because the court was not able to cater to the unjust circumstances of Parliament. We think that's something they never wanted to talk about. Then they told us that, oh, and this leads to the earlier analysis, that rich people have a better advantage. You need to fix the problems of income disparity that leads to the harms that you're talking about. You can't tell us that individuals, firstly, are so powerful, but will still get all the harms that you say they will. But before I move on, yes, you can't just concede that there's riots out there, therefore we can stop. Riots are there because rich people have a permanent incentive to mobilize support and believe that they will get that pardon. Yeah, so you're just repeating that we consider it. You need to engage in the fact that the release of such things would eventually lead to a more peaceful and more calm and safer society, right? That's the trade-off that you need to tell us. It's not worth it. Not repeat our concession. Let's look at the second thing. They tell us that in this directly responds to a lot of material in study speech, right? People, and we feel very, generally we feel a lot of these examples were very unanalogous. Firstly, he told us that, look, if you were raped by President Bush's brother, you, because he might get a pardon, will not bring a case against him. If I, or if anyone, was raped by President Bush's brother, the fact that he will get a pardon is the last thing on my mind that will lead to me not going forward with the case. Your policy of pardon does not, our policy of pardon does not discourage people from coming forward. We think authority and fear, your policy doesn't solve that. The second thing that we want to talk about is in regards to President Bush's brother as well, right? So he says that if anyone was raped by President Bush's brother, because of his supreme authority and because of the sort of leveling that President Bush had, he will be released because he has the pardon chip, right? But let's look at the context in which they serve. These are legitimate governments in Western liberal democracies that are beholden to the decisions that they make. Will President Bush more likely to risk his reputation and provide a pardon for absolutely no reason? We don't think so. No, thank you. Not order. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, let's decide this debate. This debate is worded, this House should never provide pardon for you. We gave you various amounts of analysis of people that are suffering in jail. They diminish, they belittle the situation. Oh, if you're a little uncomfortable, we'll just send you to hospitals so that you can get surgery and you can recover from that rape that you had, and we'll send you back to the exact same place where you were raped. And these guys are fine with that. We're not. There are circumstances in which you have to evaluate individuals on a case-by-case basis. And some individuals getting away with it, we acknowledge. But you never wanted to protect the people that couldn't protect themselves.
Thank you, opposition with because the opposition reply.
Let's cast our mind back to the beginning of this debate, where we mutually agreed that this would take place in Western liberal democracies, in countries that have accountable governments who need to be elected, who at some point probably need to engage with the wants and needs of their population, and not in corrupt dictatorships, fledgling democracies, or pretty much any of the circumstances that the affirmative team were actually willing to engage in this debate. Let's be clear about why that's important. Because in a Western liberal democracy, a government faces a significant amount of backlash from pardoning any individual. And that was conceded by the logic of the affirmative team in this debate, when they said victims' rights are important, and victims get incredibly angry when they see somebody who committed a crime against them go free, and people feel that justice is important, and individuals who are guilty of a crime should serve a sentence that a court handed down to them. All of that logic proved our point. It's hard for a government to pardon any individual, that they are accountable to people on the ground and are not handing out corrupt pardons left, right, and centre. In that context, let's ask two questions. First, did a democratically elected government have a right to pardon individuals? And secondly, what would be the outcome of those pardons? So, did they have a right to give them? We think that was conceded by the affirmative team, and they acknowledged at various points and through various examples that there was always a trade-off to be made when you considered the rights of victims, when you considered the broader principles of justice, and when you considered the utilitarian aims of the criminal justice system in terms of creating a better society for everybody. That principle conceded at many points in the affirmative team's case, as it rightly should be, because governments ought to make utilitarian decisions and not hold to unreasonable principles that end up leaving people worse off. The question was then, does the government have a right to intervene and make a separate decision to the court? And what they do want to engage with in this debate is that courts are necessarily restricted in their capacity to make decisions. Because what they account for are adjudicating the guilt of any one individual in any one case, not adjudicating the broader societal impact of the person being found guilty and being put into a jail. It is only a government, it is only an executive who can account for the broader national interest. And it didn't matter what that national interest was, it mattered that it was something a court could not assess, but a democratically elected government could assess. And that was the reason why governments did have a right to offer these pardons. The question was, who would they give them to? The analysis of the affirmative team, like all examples of corruption, was exclusively about rich people. We conceded in this debate that it might be true that in the same way rich people already have preferences in society, they may be more likely to get a pardon. But what we told you is those people were not so powerful that they managed to totally obfuscate justice in the first instance, given they've been found guilty. So the question whether or not that would be a completely likely circumstance, and also pointed you to the reality, which is that it hasn't really happened in the context that we're talking about, no real engagement. What the affirmative team didn't really want to talk about were the many other sets of circumstances we outlined, where there is a national or international diplomatic interest to pardon these individuals, but there is a humanitarian reason to pardon these individuals. One response we really got from Sadiq was that this was an argument to pardon everybody, and surely the outcome of that would be that nobody would ever come forward to report a crime, and never deter individuals from committing a crime. But what he failed to do in this debate is recognise the distinction between offering examples of things that might motivate a pardon, and a policy that said governments would always pardon people in those circumstances. There was a natural limitation in this debate on the capacity of a democratic government to pardon people willy-nilly. And that's highlighted the only example in this debate of President Bush, who most definitely would have been kicked out of office had he pardoned his rapist brother. We're very, very proud to oppose this.
Thank the opposition side and the debate government side.
I think this speech has a listening problem. Because in his speech, he talked about Thailand and the Philippines, but they were scrambling, so they ignored him. But anyway, it's alright. Let's talk about Western liberal democracies as well. We think our analysis applies. There are two questions we want the answers to this debate. Number one, are there enough counterbalances to the exercise of this power you're granting to the executive Number two, which policy is consistent with promoting justice? So they say, the state is going to be careful about how it uses this tool, the executive, because there's public opinion that will rise up against it and people will protest. We said, protest cuts both ways. The fact that you can blackmail the state with the option of protest means it becomes an important tool in the hands of the rich as well. At most, even if the pardon isn't granted, there's a lot of destabilizatory potential, right? And I said this in my speech, because different groups will be trying to mobilize resources to angle for this option. Now, if this option wasn't there, that destabilizatory potential wouldn't be there. Then this is a very important part of the analysis, and of course, pick the weaker part. Next, debating 102 with Gemma, listen to the whip. Because Sadiq said, right? He said, elections are never going to be decided on who was pardoned. That's why your check and balance of elections don't hold water in this debate. That's really simplistic. I mean, it's so easy for the government to make electoral issues about other things. And it's very easy for them to just get away with pardoning friends or powerful people. Name me one election that was decided on the basis of pardon. That makes no sense. That's why the check and balance is hold. And then they go, these are Western liberal democracies. The systems are intact in their checks and balances. As if saying, Western liberal democracies is a magic wand that makes these systems okay. And I understand some of them from Australia, they also elected Tony Abbott, right? Let's have steps. You know what? We agree. Rich people will always be structurally advantaged. What is the point? The point is, you are conceding that it's harder to convict them. You might want to magic wand your way out of this again by saying that let's address those things, sure, but the law has to be responsive to social realities and what's going to be abused, how privileges and powers will be used, right? So instead, you're just blind to that and tries to wash that away. Now, which policy is consistent with promoting justice? There's been statement on this plea bargaining idea, which should be dealt with, right? We said that happens in a controlled trial process under the auspices of the judiciary. In that case, you're giving something in return. You're giving information, you're agreeing to plead guilty so you save everyone else the hassle, and other things like that. In some cases, there's consent of the victim. But you know what? Even if we give them that tiny thing, so you can't argue by example that because plea bargaining is allowed, therefore this must be allowed. Because this is another step, right? Another layer where potential inequalities exercised without the controls of rules of evidence, without the controls that exist in the judiciary system. Then they hide behind unjust laws. We said, if there are unjust laws, fight that in the courts. Because the courts are going to resolve these legal questions, and it's applied consistently. They said, marginalized groups like weak prisoners or things like that. In my speech, I asked, what is the likelihood that these prisoners will get the pardon? Do they have a hotline to the executive? What are the chances that it is these prisoners who are helped? There is silence on this side, except the argument that theoretically they can be helped. But again, we need to be conscious of social realities when we give the executive the power to overturn the decision of the judiciary, especially since there are other steps that could have been taken, like appeals, like appealing for mitigating sentence at the end. We think this does deter victims. The fact that there are very few pardons does not prove the argument that pardon is not the first thing that comes to mind when deterring the victims, right? Obviously, it's a confluence of factors that deter victims. But this is an important part of the confluence because it deprives of access to hope. Those few high-profile cases, those few cases where rich people are convicted, they seem to poo-poo this point. Yes, convictions for rich people are much lower. I think this is fact. And you can see this in the earlier speech. So yes, there's still a net impact on the terror. That's something we have to account for when we decide to debate. We're proud to propose.
Thanks for voting to comply with all the speakers in the debate. Once again, congratulations to the Grandfinal. Yeah, moving on to the hosts.
Whoa, Robin, you know what? I am left out of words, I have no idea what to speak now, but wow, it was an intense debate, wasn't it?
Yes, it was like a bullet train leaders.
So, who do you think that would win, Robin?
I have no idea. I really have no idea, but both teams they did really good.
It's really true, but I'm not sure who's going to be the winner tonight. As both sides are really solid their points, and Wow, that was just excellent.
Yeah, they were outwitting each other. It was an intellectual challenge for both of the teams. Yeah, definitely. But poor Josh Bush, brother.